Aggravating to have to do, but it's something that has to be done, so we're ready to do it.
For 11 years, Gary Christian has watched the people accused of murdering his daughter be on trial, be convicted, and appeal. The man accused of being the ringleader in the torture and murders of the young Knoxville couple, Shannon Christian and Chris Newsom, will appear in court tomorrow for a post-conviction hearing. Lamarcus Davidson was the only one sentenced to the death penalty for the torture and murders of the couple. Davidson's hearing tomorrow is focused on trying to lessen his sentence and take him off death row. In January 2007, Christian and her boyfriend Christopher Newsom were out on a date when they were carjacked and taken to a nearby house. They were then tortured for days before being killed. 4 of the 5 people convicted were tried and convicted on charges related to the murders. The 5th person is awaiting trial. 10 News reporter Katie Inman sat down with Gary Christian, Christian's father, earlier today. Christian says he's upset Davidson will be in court yet again, but he plans to keep fighting for the justice his daughter and Chris deserve.
How many more stamps of approval on his conviction do we need before we get on with it?
Lamarcus Davidson's death sentence is something Gary Christian wishes would be left alone.
We're going to do whatever we have to do to get us to the day where his sentence is completed.
Davidson was convicted for torturing and killing his daughter Shannon and her boyfriend Chris Newsom in January 2007. Since then, Davidson has tried to appeal multiple times to get his sentence cut down. Christian says his daughter didn't get another chance or a choice.
I wished that Shannon would have had as many chances as he does.
And he knows he won't have to worry about having his guardian angel in the courtroom on Monday.
I know God will be. And I got a feeling he'll let her come too.
His comfort comes from knowing her worries are gone.
I just really don't think that she really cares too much about what happens with any of them. She's got her reward.
Katie Inman, 10 News.
Christian also says the district attorney told him when he first pushed for the death penalty with Davidson, he would be dealing with it for the rest of his life, to which Christian replied, "So be it."